Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey,
I am Dan.
and today we are elated to celebrate 10 years of Star Wars Rebels. Star Wars Rebels is one of my favorite Star Wars things in the whole world, and I cannot believe that it premiered 10 years ago. What do you think off the cuff about the passage of time, Dan?
So I have a unique way to look at it. I didn't watch Rebels when it came out. I didn't know when it came out. I wasn't into the Star Wars TV shows at the time. Um, so for me, it's only been about 4 years since it came out and I've watched it for the first time.
That actually is a
However,
go ahead.
it's really held up though over the 4 years, and I'm really glad I watched it when I did because so much has come from it
Hmm. That is
that
a great
it's
segue into one of my questions. I'm sorry. What led you to watch it? When did you watch it? What were the circumstances surrounding you starting to watch it in the first place?
so I got Disney Plus the day it came out.
Hmm.
And the first thing I watched was The Clone Wars in its entirety. And just by dumb luck, I timed it up right, where Clone Wars season 7, I was able to get through season 6 and immediately jump into season 7 and still watch it each week when it came out.
Oh wow, that's nice.
So I kind of just, again, dumb luck. And then I immediately finished season 7. I waited one day and then I started Rebels and watched Rebels straight through.
That honestly is kind of ideal. I had a little bit
It was.
backwards of a experience where I knew that, there was a lot of excitement with like Star Wars is coming back, Star Wars is coming back when, this is the first on-screen thing that had released from Disney, Disney after purchasing Star Wars. So I was like, you know what? Why not? I'll give this a watch. I was like, this is on Disney XD. It's a kid show. So I actually watched it on TV every Saturday for season one. Then it kind of shifted around, but on TV
Mhm.
every week, so I was with the Ghost Crew from the beginning. And I, yeah, I was initially thinking this was going to be kind of silly. And the first season is compared to what you see later on a little silly,
Well,
but I just so
but
enjoyed
just
every like growing with it. It was not what I thought it was going to be when I sat down to watch it.
exactly. And again, this is the last time I'm going to bring up the Clone Wars, but that also started a bit silly. It went from let's go on a Jedi adventure
Jar Jar
to
Jake,
watching
Mace
Maul
Windu.
decapitate four people in a hologram.
Hmm. And
And Rebels started off the same way.
and I
And
and
it
I think that it's
Rebels,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was the way Rebels presented their story is infinitely better than the way the Clone Wars did, in my opinion.
You mean that the non-chronological order of episodes didn't do it for you?
There were no, I'm going to use the F word here, so cover your ears if you don't like it. No filler episodes.
I don't like that word. We'll get there one day, I'm sure. But for me, I love that Rebels, and you could argue that the Clone Wars focused on Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin. I
Mhm.
think that's a little less strict as how this show focused on the Ghost Crew and the progression of the
Right.
Ghost Crew through time. I thought it was so powerful and allowed you to really form a bond and a connection with the characters, which is so
Yes.
powerful.
I mean, you really got in their everyday life of those five people.
And like that, especially that's part of why I love the first season so much. It's like you're just going about their business. Like it's like kind of like a reality TV show almost. Like you're like following them around their house ship. It was just so cool. Um,
The
I want to
Secret Lives of Rebel Spies.
that that's kind of cute actually. Someone should make a poster of that. Um, that brings me into my next question. What are your overall thoughts? Like you watched all four seasons, you finished it. What did you think, just big picture about the whole series?
Cohesive and complete.
Which is not
They,
something we see all the time.
right. It was a little bit shorter. I mean, only 4 seasons, but they really made you feel a lot of different ways in those 4 seasons, and every episode fit together really well.
You felt about
The
every
story just,
emotion.
yeah, as you were supposed to. You felt really happy. You felt disappointed, you felt angry,
Oh my God,
you
it's so
felt
cool.
sad.
Sad, yeah.
Yeah, we won't talk about that, but it was just really I enjoyed the story. What did you think? What I mean, you are if you guys listened to us last week or last episode, we mentioned Surprise Rebels. This is not Surprise Rebels. This is unabashed Rebels. We want to talk about Rebels today. So as the Rebels connoisseur, what did you think?
Thank you for asking. And I should lead this answer with saying Rebels is I have a hard time not saying that Rebels takes a cake for me. I think Rebels is might be my favorite package of Star Wars altogether. I think it's about as
Mhm.
perfect as you can ask for. I just love everything about it. So it truly is like a special show for me, a special piece of Star
Mhm.
Wars for me. And the reason that we've kind of talked about, I just loved it so much because you gain these attachment to these characters. I think it's such an interesting time to have two Jedi present. And I love the
Yeah.
concepts. There's so many cool concepts that were introduced here from things like the world between worlds, the concept of a Jedi being trained outside of the order, like the relationship between Kanan
Mhm.
and Ezra, a lot of Mandalorian stuff that, kind of came into play. And you talked about how a lot has stemmed from this. And I
Mhm.
think it was so strong in what it did in connecting to everything. It pulled a lot in from the Clone Wars. I thought it did a really fun job of like when Rogue One was coming out, they were so intertwined and you weren't watching it at this point,
Mhm.
but when Death Troopers were made for Rogue One, they started appearing with Thrawn in season 3, and they just like
Yeah.
they weaved everything together so well, and honestly a way that I don't necessarily think has been achieved since the show ended. So for me, the
Okay.
characters, everything just was so magical, and it like was exactly what I would want from a Star Wars.
Quick little one sentence response to this question. Do you have any criticisms of Rebels?
Let me think about that for a moment. I
And it could
think
be for something for as little as the animation style.
I'll see. I
And
don't
that's not mine.
the thin lightsabers don't bother me. I think the length. I think it was not too short. I think it was done
Mhm.
really well with what it had, but I would have loved maybe one more season in between 3 and 4, kind of just continuing
Mhm.
to show you what like a more integrated, like, by the time they get integrated into the Rebel Alliance proper, we're pretty much done. So that would
Yeah.
be something where I would love to have seen the Ghost crew like working out of Yavin a little bit more, you know,
Mhm.
Kanan struggling with that. And then we did all this stuff. Everything they hit all the major beats they need to. But season 1 gave you so much breathing room with to like meet the family. I would have loved a little more breathing room having them be in the big rebellion. But that's probably my
And
only real criticism.
and just to kind of counter that point, I really enjoyed how they were separate from the rebellion. How we got to
Yes.
see, and it really showed that the rebellion was really larger than the group of people on Yavin. How it really was a galaxy-wide rebellion. It just wasn't centralized. And what we see, especially in the Rise of Skywalker, when you're able to centralize everybody, how powerful things are.
And I think though this is kind of the whole point of that Yavin like was how like you could do a show about every rebel cell. This just happened to be a show about this particular cell, and then they come
Some
together at the
sweet
end.
Jedi.
Yeah, that, and I think Jedi and Star. I always say this if you listen to us at all. The Jedi are why I come to Star Wars, but I thought this was such a great fusion of we have the Jedi and we have our non-Jedi characters. We got a Mandalorian, we got a Wookiee looking thing, we got a crazy droid, and we've got an amazing pilot. It's just like they literally picked everything that you could have possibly wanted and
Hmm.
put in there in the Ghost Crew themselves. It's like they set themselves up for
And
success.
exactly. And speaking of the Ghost Crew, you mentioned that we really follow the show is about them. So I'll just straight up ask you, who is your favorite member of the Ghost Crew?
You see, I posed this question to Dan earlier, and I immediately regretted it because I'm gonna say it's a five-way tie.
I know.
But
I can't do that.
I think I'm gonna have to go with Ezra Bridger. And I don't think if you
That's
asked me that
solid.
at different points throughout, I don't know that I would have necessarily answered that question. But if we look at point A to point B, moving through all four seasons and even what we know now, I think he is one of the most enriched. Like you see the personal growth of the character. And I've talked about this a lot with respect to Ray and Ezra. I started watching this show when I was like 16. And then by the time
Hmm.
I, the show finished, I was like, 18, 19, 20. So it's like I kind of felt like I was growing up with Ezra. He started out as a goofy kid, then
Yeah.
he kind of came into his own and was ultimately the person who saved Lothal from Thrawn. And I think
Yeah.
there are some ups and downs along the way. I wasn't a big fan of the Ezra's going to be Maul's apprentice, and I don't think Ezra really was either. But
But
that
it just that that whole arc just shows that Ezra, like you said, he's still a child. He's still impressionable. And it makes sense that it would happen that you have Ezra who has a strong conviction and somebody who's more cunning than he is says, "Well, I can help you get to where you want to go." And Ezra being what, 15, 16 at the time?
ish, I'd say.
15, being like, "Yes, let's do it." So I
But
really
yeah,
like that. And I think
that's
to your
go ahead.
point of can it be a five-way tie? The show really did a good job of giving you enough time with each of the five characters.
They did. They
Each
all had
character had,
similar arcs like that.
and they all had their own group of episodes where it was, okay, this is a Sabine based episode. This is a Hera based like groups of episodes. And it wasn't like the Clone Wars where you said, oh, it's Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka, and all the interactions somehow relate to them. This was each of the characters were just as important as each of the other ones.
And I really like that they often, if one character was struggling with something, they would be a true family and like support that character while they were struggling. And I think that
Hmm.
is one of the most powerful things. And so I gushed about Ezra for a while, and I limited myself, if you notice, strictly to Rebels and not what we are getting now. But I want to ask you the same
Yes.
question. Who is your favorite member of the Ghost crew? With the caveat that a five-way tie is not a valid answer.
It's okay. I wouldn't have gone five-way tie anyway.
I think I know who you're going to pick.
You know me. Who do you think I'm going to pick?
I think you're going to pick Kanan.
Yeah, that'd be right.
Hey,
I liked Kanan. I
I did
liked
too.
Kanan's growth, much like how you like Ezra's growth. We got to see Kanan from going to this rebellion leader of this protector of the group to really a father figure. And those aren't really the same thing. Like you can be the shield, you can want to protect people, almost like a shepherd. Then he really did transition to a father figure for Kanan and Hera, like the mother figure. And it was great. We got to see Kanan grow as a Jedi. We got to see Kanan's emotions and how he dealt with Order 66. And I know we didn't see that in Rebels, but that was the first scene of the Bad Batch that we got. So it was really cool seeing his growth, in my opinion.
I completely agree, especially with like just like the little things. Like they were Ezra and Kanan kind of bickered, and you see where they end. Kanan was not confident in his ability to even be a Jedi, let alone train another Jedi, and
Right.
he moves past that. It was just such a incredible thing, all the way to you know the sacrifice in the end, which is it's gut wrenching. I talked about this before, how like my wife and I rewatched Rebels before Ahsoka, and I had seen it 3 times prior to that, and she had seen it twice, and we were both ugly crying as if we'd never seen it before. And it's just so
Yeah.
powerful, and it is such a strong character.
Hmm.
So Kanan,
He
Kanan's a
is.
great
And
pull.
I mean, they all are. You could make an argument for all five of them, six, including Chopper, but I don't. He has so much personality, yet none at all.
I love Chopper.
So again, I love Chopper, but I'm not including him in the five of the Ghost crew.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it's
you could make an argument for all five of them.
yeah,
And
seriously,
there's no wrong answer of who's your favorite character.
not at all. And can I make one other comment about Kanan?
Yeah.
I love how like in their Spectre designations, like Kanan was one, but that was a total red
Hmm.
herring because Hera was technically in charge. And I love that their
Hmm.
dynamic where like he kind of like put himself out there so that she was technically like viewed as like just the pilot, but she was truly like in charge. I thought that was so cool how they did that.
Yeah. And
And
it just goes back to Kanan being the one, willing the one to take the metaphorical bullet in all the situations.
for any member
He
of
will
his
go down
family.
as the leader to protect the other ones.
Totally. That brings us to our next question, which I wanted to ask is, do you have a favorite? So we talked about our favorite Ghost crew member. I wanted to push that out a little more and say, do you have a favorite new character introduced for Rebels that is, not a member of the Ghost crew?
Oh, so many. So for me, it's really a two-way tie. So I will say both of them and then not go into much detail on this for the sake of time.
Okay.
I and you might be able to guess one. I don't think you'll be able to guess the other. The first one I really liked, the Grand Inquisitor.
Oh,
He was
interesting.
sweet. Jason Isaacs, really cool character. He plays a great villain in everything I've ever seen him in. Um, he also, not to, if you were listening earlier, I was watching West Wing. He has a little small role in West Wing, little arc there, but neither here nor there. Um, he was so cold and calculating. He just did a great job. And then my second favorite minor character, or not minor, non-Ghost crew member is Agent Callus.
Oh, you took mine.
I'm sorry. Well,
No, that's
because
okay.
I
We
took
can
yours,
talk about
let's
it together.
discuss.
I love
Yeah.
a villain to hero turn. If you've heard me talk
Hmm.
about we did the whole Bad Batch season 4 coverage, and I just ate up every ounce of Crosshair pivoting into
Hmm.
a good guy. And Agent Khaled was like such a jerk and so like you never would have guessed if you watched season 1, season 2. Then you get into that episode on the ice planet with him and Zeb, and then
Hmm.
it just works so perfectly. And then when they change his outfit into Hot Callus that people call him, it's just such
Mm.
a rewarding character arc for someone who started out being kind of like a small annoying character.
Right. And we got to see the growth. And this is one of my criticisms with the sequel. So you can bear with me as I say my piece, and then you can retort. When we find out that Hux is the spy, yes, it was good, a good plot twist, but he really did it just to spite Kylo Ren.
100%. I don't think he cared. He literally said he does not care.
Exactly. And but for Callus, we see the growth. We see him really act as a person and be like, is this me? And we get to see that isolation where he's like, I kind of hate what I'm doing now.
But see,
And we get to see him lead.
for me,
Go ahead.
that Hux that is General Hux to me. He's just so petty, and it's like it's like played for a
He,
joke, but I just love that it's totally something he would do is
it
undercut
is.
undercut the whole
It's
First
just,
Order just to spite Kylo Ren.
I agree. He also probably saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
But
Um, are you good
my
for minor
favorite,
characters? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say, the scene that really brought me to Agent Callus was when he was on the ice planet with Zeb, and Zeb was angry that Callus was using the weapon. I forget what it's called.
The
You,
yes, the Lasat staff, for lack of a better term.
yes, the Lasat staff. And Zeb was like, "How dare you use it?" All this stuff, and Callus is like, "No, I was given permission to use it," and he named the Lasat that Zeb knew, and that he's so it really showed that Callus, while he is in the some of the deepest parts of the Empire, he was willing to act as a person, and he was able to respect the Lasat tradition
And
and
it
honor that.
and I loved it because the whole series up to that, Zeb was under the impression that he was using this weapon that he shouldn't have. And they
Hmm.
really twisted on his head there for the benefit of that character. It's so good. I just googled
Yes.
it. It's called a bow staff with like a bow
Yes.
rifle with an electro staff. I did want to
Yes.
say one funny Callus moment when they like realize he's Fulcrum and all that jazz,
Hmm.
and Ezra and Kanan are like with him, and they're like, he's like, make me look like I'm hurt.
Yeah.
and then Ezra pushes him through that like glass pane, and Kanan was like, "I was
Yes.
gonna do that." It's so funny. It's
Yes.
so good.
And Cal's like, you only had to do it once.
I love it. It's so funny. So I think that those are excellent favorite new characters. And I mean, we could rattle off for 7 years, but
Yeah.
I wanted to then ask you, what is your favorite legacy character appearance? So that being a
Saw
character from the
Gerrera.
Clone. Screw you. I
I'm
hate
just
Saw
kidding.
Gerrera.
I'm just kidding.
Saw
I'm just
Gerrera
kidding.
might be my least favorite Star Wars character. Sid's worse, but I don't see Sid in
That was
every
a
single thing. Saw is in
that was
everything.
a that was a visceral reaction. I apologize.
I hate Saw
Um,
Gerrera. Anyway, by legacy character, I mean someone from the Clone Wars, someone from the movies. You
oh,
get the gist.
I do, and I feel like I stole your thunder with Callus, so I'm gonna stay away from a couple people, not knowing who
Dan's gonna
you're
let
gonna pull
me
out
go
because it.
first. I'm gonna answer first so you can be honest. I'm gonna say Ahsoka is my favorite. Who's
I
surprised?
figured.
But
I
I
figured.
had a backup if you picked Ahsoka. So if you don't say it, I'm going to say that character. But for Ahsoka, we can be brief. We've talked about Ahsoka about a million times, but I just love that
Hmm.
character, and it's like she's still alive at the end of the Clone Wars, whether we had seen season 7 or not when it
Hmm.
started, which we obviously hadn't.
Right.
But just what else would Ahsoka be doing? Like it makes so much sense that she would be
Exactly.
secret working in the shadows with the rebellion and like getting to see her reunite with Rex, getting to see her face Darth Vader. It's just like everything you as a Clone Wars fan you could have wanted. And I want to go on a little personal note here. I watched season 1 of Rebels and I absolutely loved it. And then I went and watched, at the end of season 1, Ahsoka shows up. So I went and
Hmm.
watched the Clone Wars between season
Yeah.
1 and 2. And then I was all ready. And it was like everything a Clone Wars fan would want from what she does in
Yeah.
Rebels. So anyway,
Yes.
I could talk about Ahsoka for a whole hour. So I'm just going to not. What do you think?
So my legacy character is very closely related to Ahsoka and being Darth Vader.
Oh, that's a good one.
He wasn't in there a lot. I think he was in there what, 5 episodes, if that,
I would
just
say,
brief
and
appearances.
it was brief if whenever he was in there.
But it accurately, and in a little bit, we're going to talk about some of our favorite episodes. So I will keep my spiel short for now. But he wasn't in there very much. But when he was in there, he was like, okay, this guy, he's legit. This is what we finally get to see the traditional fear around Darth Vader
Yep.
of holy crap, this guy's super powerful. He has this reputation and he's just willing to do whatever he has to do. So cool. Voiced by James Earl Jones, which I also thought was really cool.
Oh yeah.
So
So much about it is so good with Darth Vader. The floating down on top of his TIE fighter.
we'll,
So
we'll get there. We'll get there.
okay, okay. So that's our favorite legacy character. Um, would you like to hop into favorite episodes now?
We will, and I'll just go right into it.
Are we
Siege of
limiting it
Lothal,
to
season
are,
two.
are we limiting it to one or are we gonna gush?
Well, mine's part one and two.
That's okay.
So I'll say my piece about it, and then
Go ahead.
so for mine, it's the season two premiere. It was a two-part Siege of Lothal. And as you just heard Joey talk about, Darth Vader floating down on his TIE fighter and then just absolutely messing up Kanan and Ezra.
So the floating down on the TIE fighter was in Twilight of the Apprentice.
Well, oh, so was that the end of season one?
End of season 2 when they're on Malachor. But what
Oh,
you're describing is when the ATST falls on him and he picks it up with his hand, which is arguably cooler than floating down.
it was his first appearance where he just showed a ridiculous amount of power.
Yes, and Ezra
And
was like,
Kanan and
I
Ezra
feel
were like,
cold.
yeah. And Kanan's like, I don't know who that is. I don't want to know who that is.
Yeah, no, and like I love when they with Darth Vader make it like the only way that Darth Vader is defeated is like because of circumstances outside of his or even potentially the other character's control.
It's comedic. I mean, the first time we've seen Darth Vader get defeated was in the trench run in A New Hope. And it's because Han Solo hits another TIE fighter who spirals into him.
It's just consistent, and it happens several times, which is awesome. Do you have any other
Mhm.
episodes you'd like to bring up? Because I have a whole bunch written down, and I'm going to talk about
I know
one set of them, and then I'm going to just briefly say the other ones.
that's fine. You are the Rebels connoisseur. This is your show. So I want to hear you just talk about them. It'll be
Okay,
fun.
so I'll be fast. I'm not gonna do a lot on one and then just briefly mention another. I'm just gonna go fast on each of them. So World Between Wolves in a Door and World Between Worlds, my favorite episode. It's so cool, so trippy. As I say, I love weird Force stuff, and we get reference to this in Ahsoka, which is amazing. Ahsoka the series, not Ahsoka the person. Um, Twilight of the Apprentice, seeing Darth Vader and Ahsoka fight, seeing Maul and Kanan
Yeah.
fight. We've got Inquisitors there. What more could you possibly want? So crazy. Never thought we'd see Darth Maul in
And
the
we
show.
yeah, and then we get a little cliffhanger, or you got a little cliffhanger.
Yeah. Sir,
I
I
didn't
mean,
get a cliffhanger.
I was waiting for what happened to Ahsoka for years. Years. It was, and Dave Filoni goes on at the Star Wars celebration for season 4. And he has Ahsoka lives question mark. Then they put the trailer on and he comes back and he has a shirt that says Ahsoka lives exclamation point. So I was like, something's happening. I don't know what's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen. Anyway, family reunion and farewell. One of my favorite series finales of a show that I've watched ever.
Yes.
The epilogue was fantastic, and the way that this fed into the Ahsoka series is amazing. Um, Trials of the Darksaber with Sabine and Kanan training with the
Hmm.
Darksaber. Such a unique episode, such a cool episode, and how Sabine kept getting angry. It just really enriching the characters.
Yeah.
The last battle where the Clankas get to work with Rex and the clones to stop the Empire. I thought it was such a symbolic, like the Clone Wars wasn't about either of these groups. It was about
Hmm.
Palpatine, and having them defeat Imperial forces was so strong. And my last one, okay? Am I going on too long?
Keep Absolutely not. Keep going.
Last one is the premiere. It's a two-parter, Spark of Rebellion.
Oh, that was a
And
good one.
and I without this episode being so strong, I don't know if the show would have gained as much traction as it does. The secret reveal of Kanan with a lightsaber still
That
gives you chills.
that was that was my second.
I didn't even realize it was
And
the
we get
premiere. Like in my
yeah.
memory.
I think the two-parter really splits it,
Hmm.
but absolutely over the giant abyss where all bad Star Wars things happen.
It's true. So yeah, I apologize. I really just rattled off a bunch of episodes, but and I could do
So
like
don't
10 more.
apologize.
I could do like 10
I
more.
I mean that's a season at that point.
I mean, I should have just pulled up a list of all of them and just read them off to you. Um, there really is not an episode I'm like, oh, I hate that episode. Even the one with Saw Gerrera in it, I like that episode. I just hate Saw Gerrera. He's a jerk.
As he is.
Um,
And there's
but
so and there's so many episodes with these just minor cameos that we didn't really even get to discuss.
Mon Mothma,
Princess Leia.
Palpatine's in World Between Worlds, Lando's puffer pigs.
Yeah.
Even Luke makes a distant appearance. Obi-Wan. That one. How did I not talk about that one?
Yeah. Oh my
I,
goodness. That was
I mean, I guess
that fight scene alone. And did you ever see, I'm sure you have, Sam Witwer talk about it,
yes.
talk about like walk you through Maul's like headspace there.
Uh-huh. And like how Obi-Wan does
Oh,
his
so
like
good.
his shifting of his stances. Oh my God. All right. Let's move on to our last question for this episode, and that is, what do you want to see? And I realize this question is a little different than if I asked you right when the series ended, but what do you want to see from the future of the Ghost Crew? Particularly referring to the Ahsoka Mandoverse stuff, or do you want something else? What do you want to see from these characters in the future?
I mean, I'd like to see Kanan come back, but I can't get that. So,
You know,
I don't know if Mace Windu comes back, maybe Kanan can. But I what I want to see, I want to see a reunion, a full true reunion, and I think we're gonna get that in Ahsoka season 2. I
Let's
really
hope so.
do.
That Ahsoka and Sabine are in another galaxy, but
And
I that is kind
and
of
Ezra. Oh no, Ezra's not. Whoops.
well, Ezra's back. Yeah, but what
I forgot how it ended.
that's okay. That's what I want too. So I think we're converging here, and I think having not having Zeb in the Ahsoka series was kind of a missed opportunity. But it seems like they have some, he's in that leak trailer for the
There's
Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
there's a storyline for it, and that's we're gonna get it at some point.
I agree. I think it's going to
Of why
happen.
is he?
I loved what the seeds they've planted with Jason Sindula, and I think that like having Kanan have a legacy is so
Mhm.
powerful. And I just really loved their I was not expecting it. I was very skeptical of them making the transition to live action. Part of me still wishes it was animated and the original actors got to, reprise their roles. But I really love the live action stuff. I love the Ahsoka series. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I it did for me as a Rebels fan what it was supposed to.
I
Uh,
mean, and I
I,
think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I just want more of these characters and of the Ghost. If you listen to our Star Wars is Alive episode where we ranked our favorite ships, the Ghost is my favorite ship in Star Wars. And I will be hopefully receiving the HasLab ginormous Ghost that I pre-ordered like a year ago and I'm impatiently waiting for.
Yes. What I think we're gonna see is we are gonna get to see Ezra train Jason Syndulla and have everything come full circle.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
I know. I think that's just the way it's gonna happen, especially with Hera in another galaxy. Oh my goodness. I don't know why not Hera. Whoops.
Dear Lord Dan.
Whoops.
Sabine.
Sabine, I think it's gonna happen. I think Ezra's gonna begin Jason's training, and then Hera's gonna get all emotional because she's gonna see Kanan and Ezra,
Oh,
and it's gonna be really good.
and in Filoni we trust, so we know it's gonna happen. Man, I
Yeah, this is his baby.
it really is. So I mean, thank you, Dan, for letting me gush when he was like, "What do you want to do for our next episode?" I was like, "Rebels 10 years, Rebels 10 years." I always bring it up. Let's just do a whole episode about it. So thank you, Dan, for allowing me to gush for however long this
Well,
was about Rebels.
and we really could make it an 2 hours discussion,
I mean,
and we would still leave stuff out.
seriously, it is such a powerful I think it is the best, and this is a personal opinion, so don't like, you don't have to agree with me, you or anyone listening. It it is the best, in my opinion, package of Star Wars. It's enriched by
Hmm.
everything around it. If you watch the Clone Wars, you'll be like, I love this Hondo guy. I love the change they've made with Hondo. Ahsoka and Vader so powerful. But on its own, in a little Star Wars bubble, the character development of the Ghost crew is so strong, and you develop such an attachment to them that it is one of my favorite things that I've ever watched of any TV show, any universe.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And I just want to throw one little now that we're wrapping up, one little stat in there. I was keeping count.
Okay.
One, the big bad of Rebels is Thrawn.
Uh-huh.
We mentioned his name one time.
Interesting.
That just goes to show how significant the main characters are
Yeah.
and how well they did the side characters. I mean, I love Thrawn. You love Thrawn. Everybody loves the big blue guy. He's
We didn't
so cool.
Yeah, we didn't talk about TIE Defenders. We didn't talk about the Bendu. We didn't There's so much. It's so much.
Yeah.
God, I love Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
any with the expectation that I'm not going to say anything else because I'm going to control myself. Do you have anything else to add, Dan?
if you haven't seen it for whatever reason, please be sure to watch it.
Seriously,
You will not regret it.
it is so enriching. And the last thing I have to say before
It's
I go ahead, go ahead.
I would say and it's relatively short too, all
It
things
is.
considered.
It is. And they're strong episodes. But the last thing I have to say before we, head off is Dan and I, if you've listened to us at all, you might have heard that we started out as coworkers before we became friends and started doing this. And Dan's very first day, I have a bunch of Star Wars toys on my desk, which Dan has contributed to now. But I I was like, oh, Dan's like, oh, I love Star Wars. I was like, oh yeah, me too. And I always like ease in. I'm like, oh, what's your favorite movie? Have you seen Rebels? And Dan said Count Dooku's my favorite character, and I love Rebels. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be friends with this guy. So that
Yeah,
was
that
part of
was
your litmus test that you didn't
good.
even know was happening.
Glad I passed it.
The answer is not usually yes. So I
And
was very nice.
yeah, sweet. And and one last thing I'm gonna mention. Ezra's blaster saber. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh my God. All right. Well, thank you. So amazing. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And if there's something that we didn't talk about that you love about Star Wars Rebels, please feel free to let us know. We would absolutely love to hear from you. And with that,
Hmm.
thank you again for listening and consider giving us a like or a subscription on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. And consider giving us a follow on Twitter at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And with that, we thank you again for listening and we will see you next time.
See you next time.